What is the best creepypasta? You might argue Candle Cove, the Russian sleep experiment, Baraska, which I wasn't able to talk about this month. Most of those seem to be trumped by one story in particular. Penpal by David Orbach was originally posted to the No Sleep subreddit in 2011. The tale is divided up into 6 parts, making it one of the longer well-known pastas. If you haven't read it or listened to a narration, go ahead and do so. I can't tell you what to do. So let's just get into a summary. Footsteps is the first installment, following the author as a child, waking up in the middle of the woods for no reason. He's freaked out, as any kid would be, and tries to find his way back home. After some harrowing descriptions of the journey back, his mom and the police reveal this running away note he left the evening before. But here's the thing, the author didn't write that note. That's not his handwriting. Footsteps was originally pictured as a one-off, and it works as its own story. The situation the author finds himself in is terrifying, and the twist is freaky. Due to reader demand, he made a sequel and eventually turned it into a series. The previous first, and now this second installment, open a lot like 1999. Balloons starts with the author describing an assignment in elementary school where they wrote letters and attached them to balloons in order to send them out and find a pen pal to write to. Something about teaching kids about community. An important detail is that the author sends along $1 with his letter so that his hypothetical pen pal can buy stamps. When his mystery pen pal sends something back, all he gets is a blurry Polaroid picture. He starts getting more of these blurry Polaroids, so much that he has an entire drawer in his bedroom full of them. We're introduced to Josh, the main character's best friend. He's going to be very important in the rest of this. That summer, he and MC set up a lemonade stand in their front yard, and MC realizes that the $1 he sent with his letter came back to them. He's pretty surprised. Later, he looks at all the Polaroids again and sees something else interesting. They're all pictures of him. Not close-ups, of course, but these are all clearly pictures of him taken from afar. His mom is freaked out and starts calling the cops, because what's even worse is that none of them have any postage or anything. They were dropped off directly at his house or school by someone. Okay, I'll spoil it. The main antagonist of the story isn't a ghost or cryptid or science experiment gone wrong. The pen pal in Penpal is a stalker. The story is grounded in reality, and that's where the horror comes from. Chapter 2 takes place before the first, setting up the events that led to Footsteps, and MC's introduction to the person that would change his life forever, in the worst way. Chapter 3, Boxes, is named after the main character's pet cat. It's set up early on how Boxes would sneak off and into the crawl space below MC's house. Whenever the cat would go missing, they'd know to look there. It also sets up MC's move to the city, which is a big point in the story and impacts his relationship with Josh a whole lot. Mom looks below the crawl space one last time to see if Boxes is down there, and is a little disturbed by what she does find. Coincidentally, they move away from the house early on that same day, leaving a bunch of their stuff behind. Later on, when MC moves to the city, Boxes runs away again and doesn't come back. While visiting Josh back in his hometown, he figures that the cat ran all the way back to their old house. The rest of the story involves the two kids hatching a plan to sneak over there and get the cat back. The old house is now a house of horrors, as it looks like somebody's squatting there. Below the crawl space is a bunch of dead animals, and all of MC's old clothes are hung up in the closet. Along the wall are those same Polaroids, including ones of him and Josh. This chapter has another twist ending, and while I think overall the story is very well put together, the reliance on twists at the end of every chapter gets repetitive. The 4th chapter flashes back to before the last. I know, the timeline is very confusing. This is before the main character moves away. He and Josh build a raft in order to map out the area around their houses, and come across this old lady who lives in the neighborhood. She isn't quite all there and claims that her dead husband finally came back, whatever that means, when in reality, she's being tricked by the pen pal. And the people from the morgue come next morning to drag her body away. The idea here, I suppose, is that the pen pal is killing these people out of jealousy. Makes sense given what we see from him later on, especially next chapter, which is also the weakest. This is a lot later on. He and Josh haven't spoken in a while, both now in their teens. Josh's sister Veronica is introduced as a sort of love interest, but is killed off later as that chapter's trademark pen pal twist. Before he's aware of her death, MC gets a couple of texts from her asking to see him at the movies. He goes and she's not there, but a mysterious, smelly, older man sits next to him instead. That's the guy. That's the pen pal. That's the guy who killed his sister, so he could have the main character all to himself. The last chapter, Friends, is absolutely gut-wrenching. Here we find out that Josh had supposedly ran away, but that's not the case. Josh did try to finish the map of the neighborhood he and MC were making all those years back, but ran into you-know-who in the process. Josh's dad was the one to find the bodies. Yes, bodies. The Penpal's reign of terror is over, but he took Josh with him. It's a tragic ending to an unsettling story. Reading or listening to Penpal for the first time is an experience. It keeps you on your toes, makes you feel sick at certain points, but there's an odd sense of nostalgia throughout. Being stalked is a scary idea, and the tale pulls from all the kinds of fears a person can have regarding it. The main character isn't given a name or described in any real detail, so it's easy to project onto him. The villain is intentionally left vague, so your imagination fills in all the details. Bits of it are kind of bad and don't hold up. The sister character is only really used as a plot point, and certain very understandable things about Josh's family are brought up at the end with no real build-up. A Reddit comment also points out how unrealistic it is that the narrator doesn't realize anything going on until he's older, and after seriously considering it, I agree. But as far as creepypastas go, the bar is not too high, let's be honest. The Penpal author eventually made a Kickstarter to publish it as a novel, and eventually got released a year later. There are several differences between the no sleep posts and the book from what I read online, obviously longer, and I assume with mentions of Reddit removed. It's like when Abandoned by Disney got published and they had to call it Dandyland. Is Penpal the best creepypasta? I think it's up there. It's not formatted like any kind of urban legend or historical account, but is still an effective work of horror. It's elevated above a lot of others. It's like your bone-chilling, jump-scare-free, atmospheric, character-driven, slow-burn horror film from A24 versus like The Conjuring 5 or the Rake movie.